This story is titled, My Stepdaughter Asked Me for $7,000, and when I said no, she accused me of SA, and my wife believed her without any proof and tried to ruin my life. Alright, so here's the deal. I'm Jack, 46 male, and life was finally starting to look up after a rough few years. My first marriage ended about 10 years ago. Rachel and I had been together for 12 years, but honestly, we were better as friends than as husband and wife. We married too young, had no clue what we wanted out of life, and eventually realized we were just coexisting. No big fights, no drama, just a slow, mutual drift apart. My second wife, Lauren, 43 female, came into my life when I wasn't really looking for anything serious. We met at a community fundraiser for rebuilding homes after a flood swept through our town. I was helping organize volunteers, and she was running an art station for kids. Lauren had this vibrant, positive energy that was hard to ignore. She was a single mom to Emma, who was 16 at the time, and working 2 jobs just to stay afloat, teaching art classes during the day and working at a local diner at night. Emma's dad, Mike, had checked out of the picture long ago. According to Lauren, he bailed when Emma was 2. He had one of those new family, new life situations down in Texas and never looked back. No child support, no visits, just radio silence. I remember thinking how strong Lauren must have been to hold it all together on her own. We started dating not long after that fundraiser. Lauren and I clicked right away. We had similar interests, music, hiking, even the same cheesy old movies we'd both watched a million times. After about a year of dating, I proposed. It just felt right. When Lauren and Emma moved into my house, everything seemed perfect at first. Lauren was finally able to quit her second job at the diner because my salary as a construction project manager was more than enough to cover the bills. Emma seemed to settle in just fine too. She even helped out with the wedding planning, picking decorations and talking about how excited she was to have a real family again. My house isn't fancy, but it's mine. I bought it in my 30s after years of saving and some smart investments. It's got 3 bedrooms, a decent yard, and it's in a good neighborhood. I figured it'd be a great place for all of us to start this new chapter together. Lauren was less stressed without having to work 2 jobs, and she finally had time to focus on her art again. We had family dinners, movie nights. It felt like I was finally building the kind of life I'd always wanted. But looking back, I think I ignored a lot of red flags. Emma was always a little high maintenance. At first, it was small stuff. She'd ask for extra money for school supplies, then come home with some overpriced backpack that looked more like a fashion statement than anything functional. Or she'd insist she needed a new outfit for an event at school and show up with a designer label. Lauren always brushed it off, saying, "She's been through a lot without her dad." Another red flag I missed was how Lauren handled money. When we first met, she was drowning in debt from trying to give Emma everything she asked for. Lauren carried this massive guilt about being a single mom, and it showed in how she parented. Emma wanted the latest iPhone? Lauren found a way to make it happen, even if it meant putting off bills. Emma wanted expensive makeup? Lauren picked up extra shifts to pay for it. I thought I could help them break out of that cycle. I helped Lauren budget, got her debt under control, and even started setting aside money for Emma's college fund. But the more I said no to Emma, the more Lauren caved. I didn't realize it at the time, but Emma had her mom wrapped around her finger. It wasn't all bad in the beginning, though. There were moments when I genuinely felt like we were a family, but those moments didn't last. Emma's entitled behavior kept creeping in, and Lauren's tendency to make excuses for her only made things worse. Still, I thought we could handle it. I was convinced that with enough patience and understanding, we could work through anything. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was. I didn't realize it at the time, but Emma wasn't just a spoiled teenager. She was a master manipulator. And as much as I wanted to believe Lauren had my back, the truth was, she'd always put Emma first, no matter what. But I didn't know any of that yet. At that point, I was just a guy trying to build a life with the woman he loved, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. All right, so by now you know the honeymoon phase didn't last long. I thought Emma was just adjusting to the new family dynamic, but man, I couldn't have been more wrong. Emma's true colors started shining through, and let me tell you, they weren't pretty. The first big issue came about 2 months after they moved in. Emma announced that she needed to redecorate her bedroom. Now, mind you, her room was already furnished and perfectly fine. Queen-sized bed, a desk, a wardrobe, the whole setup. But apparently it wasn't aesthetic enough for her new vision. She came to me and Lauren with a list of demands. A new bed frame, designer wallpaper, and some LED lights she'd seen on TikTok. The total? Close to $2,000. Lauren was hesitant at first, but Emma worked her magic, pulling out the crocodile tears and the whole, "you don't care about my happiness" routine. I tried to stand firm, saying she could redecorate if she saved up and contributed herself. But Lauren eventually gave in, as she always did. It's just her room, Jack. It's her space, she said, as if that justified spending a couple grand on a vanity project. Emma barely lifted a finger to help with the redecorating. She acted like she was the foreman, barking orders at me while I painted her walls and assembled her new furniture. And once it was all done, she barely even used the space. Within weeks, she was already talking about wanting to switch it up again. Then there was the whole study abroad debacle. Out of nowhere, Emma came home one day, announcing that her school was offering a summer program in Paris, and she absolutely had to go. She didn't even ask. She just assumed we'd foot the bill. When I looked up the costs, my jaw hit the floor. Between tuition, airfare, and living expenses, it came out to over $10,000. I said no immediately. I mean, come on, we're not made of money. And it's not like Emma was some straight-A student who was crushing it academically. But Lauren? She started making excuses for her again. She's young, Jack. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Emma, of course, took that as her cue to guilt-trip us further. If Dad were around, he'd let me go, she said, which was rich coming from someone whose dad hadn't even sent her a birthday card in years. When I didn't budge, Emma retaliated by giving us the silent treatment for weeks. She'd come home from school, slam her door, and refuse to speak to either of us. It was like living with a moody dictator. Lauren was upset the whole time, bending over backward to keep the peace, while I just tried to ignore it. Then there was the car situation. Emma got her first car, a used but reliable little sedan, for her 17th birthday. I thought it was more than generous, especially since I helped pay for half of it. But within 6 months, she'd totaled it. She ran a stop sign, and the car was beyond saving. Instead of being grateful she wasn't hurt, Emma started dropping hints about wanting a cooler car next time. Lauren actually considered it, but I put my foot down. I remember Rachel giving me a heads up about this sort of thing. We talked on the phone every couple of months, and she'd always ask how things were going with Lauren and Emma. When I mentioned the car incident, she told me, "Just be careful, Jack. Kids like that don't grow out of entitlement overnight." At the time, I brushed it off. I thought Rachel was just being protective of me, but man, I wish I'd listened. And let's not forget about the dog. Emma decided she wanted a dog. Specifically, a purebred golden retriever puppy she found online for $3,500. Now, I love dogs, but we both work full-time. And Emma wasn't exactly known for her responsibility. I told her no. Lauren told her no. But Emma wasn't having it. She started showing us videos of sad shelter dogs and making these overdramatic speeches about how she'd be the perfect dog mom. Next thing I know, Lauren and I are coming home from work one day to find a puppy running around the house. Emma had somehow convinced her friend's mom to front the money, with the promise that she'd pay it back soon. Lauren was furious at first, but Emma turned on the waterworks and got her to cave. "We'll figure it out," Lauren said. I ended up footing the bill for everything: the dog's food, vet visits, training classes, while Emma barely even walked it. Then there was the modeling phase. Emma decided she wanted to be a model and convinced Lauren to hire a photographer for a professional portfolio shoot. This wasn't some budget-friendly local photographer either. No, Emma wanted the best of the best, someone with an impressive Instagram following, of course. That alone cost over $1,500. The photo shoot was a disaster. Emma complained the entire time about the lighting, the angles, the outfits. By the end, she was sulking because she didn't look perfect in the raw photos. Lauren tried to cheer her up, saying the pictures would look better after editing, but Emma wasn't having it. She demanded we book a second shoot to redo everything. I shut that idea down immediately, which of course made me the villain yet again. What really got under my skin, though, was how Emma treated Lauren. She didn't just manipulate her, she disrespected her constantly. She'd roll her eyes whenever Lauren asked her to help out around the house and act like basic chores were beneath her. One time, Lauren asked her to load the dishwasher, and Emma actually said, "Why don't you do it? You're better at stuff like that." Lauren just laughed it off, but I could tell it stung. And don't even get me started on the emergencies. Every few weeks, Emma would come to us with some new crisis that required immediate financial intervention. Her laptop broke, her phone screen cracked, her car needed new tires. It was always something. And every single time, Lauren would dip into our savings to bail her out. At one point, I tried to set up a system where Emma would have to pay us back for these so-called emergencies, but that idea went nowhere. Lauren was too soft, and Emma knew exactly how to exploit that. I started feeling like I was living with a con artist. Emma wasn't just entitled, she was calculating. She knew exactly how to play Lauren against me, and always found a way to get what she wanted. By the time Emma turned 20, it was clear that she had no intention of growing up. She dropped out of community college after one semester, claiming it wasn't for her. She refused to get a part-time job, saying it would damage her personal brand. And yet she constantly complained about how unfair it was that her friends got to travel and buy expensive stuff while she was stuck at home. I tried to talk to Lauren about it, really talk, but she always had an excuse for Emma's behavior. She's just finding herself, or she'll grow out of it. But deep down, I think Lauren knew Emma wasn't going to change. She just didn't know how to handle it. At this point, I was starting to lose my patience. I loved Lauren, but Emma was making life unbearable. I felt like I was living in a house where I was constantly outnumbered, constantly the bad guy. And the worst part? I hadn't even seen the full extent of what Emma was capable of yet. It all started one Sunday afternoon. I was in my office catching up on some work when Emma knocked on the door. That alone was unusual. She normally just barged in. She walked in, holding her phone like it was some kind of trophy, and started telling me about this amazing opportunity she had. So, I've been doing research, she said, like she was presenting a college thesis. I want to start my own skincare line. Everyone's getting into clean beauty right now, and I already have the perfect name and logo. I just need the startup money to get it off the ground. I leaned back in my chair, already skeptical. What kind of money are we talking about? She grinned like she'd just won the lottery. It's only $7,000. That'll cover product samples, packaging, and my website. I already talked to a supplier, and they're ready to work with me as soon as I send the payment. I stared at her, waiting for more. A business plan? A timeline? Market research? Something to show she'd put actual thought into this. But no, she just stood there, clearly expecting me to say yes on the spot. Do you have any of this written down? Like a plan or projections? I asked. Emma rolled her eyes. Jack, it's not that complicated. It's skincare. Everyone buys it. I've seen people blow up overnight just by posting on TikTok. I already have the vision. I just need the funds. I sighed. Emma, $7,000 isn't pocket change. Starting a business takes more than an idea and a TikTok account. Have you even considered how much time and effort this will take? Her face immediately turned sour. Why do you always have to make things so hard? You just don't believe in me. If I were your real daughter, you'd be supportive. Here we go again, the guilt trip. She knew exactly how to push buttons, but I wasn't budging. Emma, it's not about not believing in you. It's about being realistic. Starting a business is a huge commitment, and you don't have the experience or a plan to back this up. I'm not going to hand over $7,000 just because you have a vision. She stormed out, muttering something under her breath about how I was a dream crusher. I thought that was the end of it. I should have known better. Later that night, Lauren came to me looking uneasy. Emma told me about her business idea, she started, sitting down next to me on the couch. I think it's a good thing that she's passionate about something. I put my head in my hands. Lauren, she's not passionate about anything except spending other people's money. She has no plan, no experience, nothing. It's just another one of her whims. Lauren bit her lip, like she was trying to find the right words. I know it seems that way, but maybe this could be a turning point for her. Maybe if we give her the resources, she'll finally take responsibility for something. She's 20 years old, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She dropped out of school, refuses to work, and spends half her day scrolling Instagram. What about this makes you think she's ready to run a business? Lauren didn't have an answer. She just sighed and said, I'll talk to her. The next morning, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. Emma was furious. Why do you always take his side? She snapped. It's like you don't even care about my future. I do care, Lauren said, trying to stay calm. But $7,000 is a lot of money, and you don't have anything to show for this idea yet. Maybe you could start smaller, like working part-time to save up. Oh, so now I'm not good enough to follow my dreams because I don't have a job? Emma interrupted. Do you even hear yourself? You're supposed to be my mom, but you treat me like some loser. I walked into the room, not wanting Lauren to take all the heat. Emma, no one's saying you can't have dreams. We're saying you need to be realistic and work for them like everyone else. She glared at me like I'd just insulted her entire existence. You're the reason she won't support me. You've been against me since day one. With that, she stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. The tension hung in the air for the rest of the week. Emma barely spoke to either of us, slinking around the house like a ghost. Lauren was caught in the middle, clearly torn between wanting to stand by me and not wanting to upset Emma. But things took a turn I didn't see coming. One evening, Lauren came into the living room with this look on her face I'll never forget. We need to talk, she said, sitting down across from me. Okay, I said cautiously. It's about Emma, she started, her voice trembling. She told me something, and I don't even know how to process it. My stomach dropped. What did she say? Lauren took a deep breath. She said you've been inappropriate with her when I'm not home. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't even comprehend the words coming out of her mouth. What? She said you've been making her uncomfortable, that you've been following her around the house and trying to get her alone. Lauren, that's insane, I said, my voice shaking. I've done no such thing. You know me. You know I'd never. She seemed so scared, Jack, Lauren interrupted. I didn't know what to say to her. She's lying, I said firmly. Think about it. This all started after I refused to give her the money. She's trying to manipulate you. Lauren looked torn, like she wanted to believe me but couldn't ignore what Emma had said. Why would she lie about something like this? Because she knows you'll believe her, I snapped. She's been playing us for years, and you've let her get away with it. Lauren flinched, but I didn't care. I was too angry, too hurt. The fact that she even entertained Emma's accusation was a slap in the face. I spent the rest of the night replaying the conversation in my head, trying to figure out how things had gotten to this point. Emma had crossed a line I never thought she'd cross, and Lauren's hesitation to defend me made me feel like I was standing on quicksand. The next day, I tried to show Lauren proof, security camera footage, work schedules, anything to prove I wasn't even home during the times Emma claimed things happened, but Lauren wasn't convinced. You could have deleted footage, she said quietly. I couldn't believe it. The woman I married, the woman I trusted, was choosing to believe a lie over years of knowing who I am. Emma, meanwhile, was playing the role of the victim perfectly. She'd flinch whenever I walked into a room, cry to Lauren about how scared she was, and give me these smug, knowing looks when Lauren wasn't around. And just like that, my life started unraveling. I knew I was in for the fight of my life. I wasn't just dealing with a spoiled kid anymore. I was up against a manipulator who had no problem destroying me to get what she wanted. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I wasn't about to wait for things to spiral further out of control. The lawyer I found was sharp, experienced, and didn't sugarcoat anything. False accusations are incredibly tricky, he said during our first meeting. The court of public opinion doesn't wait for proof, and if this escalates, it could ruin your life, even if you're innocent. We need to build an airtight case. He walked me through what I needed to do. First, gather every piece of evidence I could find. Second, document everything. Every interaction, every text message, every call. Third, and most importantly, don't confront Emma directly. He explained that people like her thrive on drama, and any emotional outburst on my part could be used against me. I started by pulling up my security camera footage. My house has cameras in the main living areas and outside, something I'd installed a few years back after a break-in in the neighborhood. I combed through hours of footage, looking for any evidence that might contradict Emma's claims. Sure enough, there were countless clips of her acting completely normal when she thought no one was watching. In one clip, she was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone and laughing, just minutes after supposedly having a traumatic interaction with me. I compiled all the footage and gave it to my lawyer. This is good, he said, nodding as he watched the clips. It shows she's not as afraid of you as she's claiming to be, but we're going to need more. Next, I went through my phone records. Every text, every call, every email that had anything to do with Emma went into a folder. Most of the texts were from Lauren, updating me on Emma's demands, or asking me to give in just this once. But there were a few from Emma herself, passive-aggressive messages about how it must be nice to have money and not care about anyone else. My lawyer said they were useful, but not damning enough on their own. Then I reached out to my neighbors. If anyone had noticed anything odd about Emma's behavior, I wanted to know. Mrs. Lane, who lives next door, was more than willing to help. I've been meaning to say something, Jack, she said when I knocked on her door. That girl has been throwing parties while you and Lauren are at work. I've had to call the cops twice for noise complaints. She gave me a written statement, detailing the dates and times of the incidents. Mr. Patel, who lives across the street, also came through. He has security cameras on his property, and when I asked if they'd picked up anything unusual, he sent me a few clips. One showed Emma sunbathing in the front yard when she was supposedly too terrified to leave the house. Another caught her sneaking a guy into the house through a side window late at night. But the most shocking piece of evidence came from her own Instagram account. I hadn't thought to check it before, but when I did, I found a treasure trove of contradictions. There were selfies of her smiling in her room with captions like, "Chilling at home, living my best life," posted on the same days she claimed I was harassing her. There were photos from parties, trips to the mall, and even one from a nail salon where she bragged about getting spoiled. I screenshotted everything and added it to my growing file of evidence. My lawyer suggested taking things a step further. If you're comfortable with it, we can install voice-activated recorders in the house, he said. It's legal since it's your property, and it could give us more insight into her conversations when she thinks no one's listening. I hesitated at first. It felt invasive, even though I knew I was in the right. But after everything Emma had already done, I realized I couldn't afford to hold back. So I set up recorders in the common areas, the kitchen, living room, and hallway outside Emma's room. It didn't take long to pay off. Within days, I had recordings of Emma talking to her friends about her plan. In one clip, she laughed and said, "Mom always believes me. Jack doesn't stand a chance." In another, she bragged about how she could cry on cue to make Lauren think she was terrified. But the most damning recording was a phone call with one of her friends where she admitted everything. "I made it up," she said casually. "He's being such a jerk about the money, so I had to do something. Mom will take my side no matter what." When I played that recording for my lawyer, he smiled for the first time since we started working together. "This is it," he said. "This is the kind of evidence that will hold up in court." But he warned me not to confront Emma or Lauren yet. "Let's build the strongest case possible before you make any moves," he said. "We want to be prepared for whatever they throw at you." Over the next few weeks, I kept gathering evidence. Every time Emma slipped up, I documented it. I started feeling like a detective in my own house, constantly on edge, waiting for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. Lauren, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to what was going on. She was still unaware of anything around Emma, doing everything she could to protect her from me. I tried to talk to her a few times, but it always ended in the same argument. "Why would she lie about something like this?" she'd say, over and over, as if repeating it enough times would make it true. I started to feel like I was living in some kind of twisted reality. Here I was, the guy who'd done everything he could to support this family, being treated like a criminal in my own home. But I knew I couldn't let my emotions get to me. The stakes were too high. My reputation, my career, my entire future depended on proving the truth, and I was determined to see it through, no matter what it took. Deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before Emma slipped up in a way she couldn't come back from. That moment finally came one Saturday morning. Lauren had gone grocery shopping, leaving me and Emma alone in the house. I was in my office trying to get some work done when I heard footsteps coming down the hallway. My gut told me to hit record on my phone. Emma walked in without knocking. She didn't look angry or upset, just smug, like she had the upper hand. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression neutral. "All right, what's on your mind?" She wasted no time getting to the point. "I'm giving you one last chance to fix this," she said. "If you give me $50,000, I'll tell Mom I made everything up. I'll even apologize, and we can move on. No one else has to know." I stared at her, trying to keep my face blank while my mind raced. $50,000? She wasn't even trying to pretend this was about her business anymore. This was straight-up blackmail. "What happens if I say no?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Emma smirked. "Then I take this public. I'll go to the police, post my story online, and contact every charity you work with. I've already written a post about how you've been grooming me since I was a teenager. It'll ruin you, Jack. Even if you're innocent, no one's going to believe you. Not over me." She sat back in the chair, looking so pleased with herself that it made my stomach turn. I wanted to yell at her, to throw her out of my house right then and there, but I knew better. I just nodded slowly, pretending to consider her demands. "That's a big ask, Emma," I said. "I need some time to think about it." She shrugged. "Fine, but don't take too long. My patience is running out." With that, she got up and walked out of the room, leaving me sitting there, stunned. I waited until I heard her door close, before stopping the recording. My hands were shaking as I played it back, listening to her lay out her entire plan in her own words. I sent the file to my lawyer immediately. He called me within minutes. "This is it," he said. "She's admitted to everything. Lying, blackmail, the works. You're in the clear now." But we weren't done yet. My lawyer suggested I confront both Emma and Lauren at the same time, with him on a video call to mediate. That way, there would be no room for manipulation or backtracking. Lauren got home later that afternoon, completely unaware of what had happened. I asked her to sit down in the living room, saying there was something important we needed to discuss. Emma came in a few minutes later. "What's this about?" Lauren asked, glancing nervously between us. "It's about the truth," I said, pulling out my phone. "Emma, I think it's time you told your mom what's really been going on." Emma's smirk faltered for a second before she quickly recovered. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. I didn't answer. Instead, I connected my phone to the TV and hit play. The first recording was from the living room a few weeks ago, where Emma bragged to her friend about how stupid Lauren was for believing her. Lauren's face went pale as Emma's voice filled the room, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate her. The next clip was Emma's phone call with her friend, where she admitted to making everything up because I wouldn't give her money. Lauren started crying, covering her mouth with her hands. "Mom, he's lying! He edited this!" Emma shouted, but there was panic in her voice now. I held up my phone, showing her the time-stamped files. "These are raw recordings, Emma. Stop lying." Then I played the final recording, the one from that morning, where Emma tried to blackmail me for $50,000. The room went completely silent. Lauren looked like she was about to be sick, while Emma sat frozen, her face drained of color. When the recording ended, I turned to Lauren. Do you believe me now? Lauren didn't say anything at first. She just stared at Emma, tears streaming down her face. Is this true? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma jumped to her feet, desperate now. Mom, he's twisting everything. He forced me to say those things. Stop, Lauren said, cutting her off. Just stop. Emma tried to argue, but Lauren shook her head, her voice rising. I believed you. I turned against my husband because I thought you were telling the truth, and the whole time, you were lying? Emma's mask finally slipped. She went from panicked to angry in an instant. You always take his side, she screamed. You're a terrible mom, and he's a control freak who deserves everything I said about him. Lauren broke down, sobbing into her hands, while Emma stormed off to her room. I called my lawyer and let him know what had happened. Within an hour, the eviction notices were printed and ready to go. Emma was the first to leave, still screaming about how we'd ruined her life. She packed a few bags and went to stay with a friend. Lauren begged me for another chance, saying she'd had no idea how far Emma would go. I just wanted to protect her, she said through her tears. I shook my head. You believed the worst of me without any proof, Lauren. I don't think I can come back from that. She moved out the next day, taking a few essentials and leaving the rest for the movers. I had the locks changed immediately and installed even more security measures. Emma, unsurprisingly, tried to spin the entire situation in her favor. Within days of moving out, she posted this long, dramatic story on Instagram about how she was a survivor who had been forced to leave her toxic home. She claimed I was abusive, that Lauren had betrayed her, and that she was starting fresh to heal. She even started a GoFundMe to help with legal fees, though what legal fees she was talking about, I have no idea. The thing is, Emma's been fooling people her whole life, but this time, she underestimated how much evidence I had against her. My lawyer sent cease and desist letters to her, her friends who were sharing her posts, and even the GoFundMe platform itself. Attached to those letters were all the recordings, screenshots, and documentation we'd gathered. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. One of Emma's former friends, someone she'd apparently screwed over in the past, posted screenshots of texts where Emma bragged about making up the whole story to get money out of me. Another friend, the one from the recorded phone calls, came forward and confirmed everything. Emma's carefully curated victim persona fell apart almost overnight. Her GoFundMe was shut down, her social media accounts went private, and the few sponsorships she'd managed to land for her wannabe influencer career were pulled. Word spread quickly in our social circle, and suddenly, Emma didn't have many people left in her corner. As for Lauren, she's been lying low. She sent me a long email a few weeks after she moved out, apologizing for everything. She admitted that deep down, she'd known Emma was lying, but couldn't bring herself to face the truth because it would mean admitting she'd failed as a parent. I wanted so badly to believe she was still my little girl, she wrote. I let that blind me to who she's become. It was a heartfelt email, and I could tell she was genuinely remorseful, but it didn't change anything for me. There's no coming back from that kind of betrayal. I never responded. I heard through mutual friends that Lauren had moved back to her old neighborhood and picked up a job at a local art supply store. She's still teaching art classes at the community center, which I think is good for her. But from what I've been told, she's struggling financially again, juggling bills and trying to rebuild her life. And Emma? Well, karma's been working overtime on her. After her social media implosion, she packed up and moved to Reno, of all places, to live with some other wannabe influencers. They're sharing a tiny apartment, splitting bills, and from what I've heard, it's not the glamorous life she'd envisioned. She's still trying to claw her way into the spotlight, but with her reputation in shambles, no one's biting. As for me, I've been focusing on putting the pieces back together. The first thing I did was finalize the divorce. My lawyer made sure it was quick and clean. Lauren didn't have a claim to my house, and I had all the documentation showing that I'd been the one covering most of the expenses during our marriage. In the end, she didn't fight it. The second thing I did was step back from the children's charity I'd been volunteering with. That part hurt the most. I'd been with the organization for years, and it had always been a big part of my life. But with the accusations and the fallout, I didn't want to risk any bad press affecting their work. My lawyer said it was the right move, but it still stings. Looking back, I've learned a lot from this whole mess. I've learned that trust is fragile, that people can hide their true selves for a long time, and that sometimes, even the people you love the most can let you down. But I've also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. Karma may have dealt with Emma and Lauren, but it's also been kind to me in its own way.
My sister sternly announced, "We no longer need you here. Please leave the place where you work from home. You're just living off us," with a tone that signaled she was done discussing it. My parents joined in, singing the same tune in unison, "Get out. We're tired of you and your dog always being in the way." "If that's how you feel, I'll just do what I want," I replied, my mind already plotting my next steps. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Lisa, a 41-year-old single woman working as a freelance web designer. I can do my job from anywhere thanks to the internet and my home setup. I have my own space to work in, and I enjoy the freedom of managing my own time." Despite loving my job, my life was disrupted 5 years ago when my parents suddenly decided to visit me without notice. As soon as they walked into my house, they began to look around and soon started a conversation that hinted at major changes ahead. "This house is quite spacious, Lisa," my mother observed, looking around. "It almost seems like we could live here too." "And there's even a spare room," my father added. "It seems a waste for Lisa to live in such a big house all by herself." Without asking me, my parents had made up their minds in their typical manner. They seemed to think moving in with me was settled without even considering what I might want. I had never planned to live with them, and I made my position very clear. "Hold on a moment, I have no desire to live with you," I said, puzzled by their assumption. "What are you even suggesting?" My father's face flushed red with anger as he sharply retorted, "You've taken over this house, claiming it was from your Uncle Michael, and you're trying to claim it as your own. There's a limit to how low you can go." I tried to set the record straight. I didn't take it over. I had a proper discussion with Uncle Michael, and he willingly transferred it to me, I explained. Despite my protests, my parents had already decided to move in. They insisted, "Our old house is falling apart, and it's no longer suitable for us to live there." Given that my mother didn't work and my father's income wasn't enough to cover major repairs, they saw no other option but to move into the house I had inherited from my Uncle Michael. Faced with their difficult situation, I couldn't just leave them homeless, so I reluctantly agreed to let them move in. Once they settled in, however, they didn't hesitate to make sarcastic remarks. "Hey Lisa, you're already in your 40s, aren't you? Don't you have any plans of getting married?" They would taunt, always pointing out my single status. I find great satisfaction in my work and am truly content with my life. Yet the people around me often express concerns about my relationship prospects. They suggest that I should follow in my sister's footsteps, who has taken a different path in life. Contrary to their expectations, my sister's married life has faced its own challenges. Nevertheless, I remain unfazed, reassuring them that I'm perfectly fine with how things are. It was during one such discussion that my mother, who had been eavesdropping, decided to butt in. "Hey, don't speak ill of your sister like that. Unlike you, she's married and even has a stable job at a company," she interrupted. Defending my own choices, I replied, "I might not be married, but I am doing a respectable job too." My mother wasn't convinced and continued her criticisms. "You're always just messing around on your computer. You're probably making money through some shady means, aren't you?" she accused. Despite their doubts and criticism, I continued to live my life according to my own terms, valuing my independence and the career I've built. I quickly responded, "Shady? I'm earning my living honestly through legitimate work. There's no need to worry." My mother was not pleased with my reply and scolded me sharply, "How dare you talk back to your mother? You really are the complete opposite of your sister." This constant comparison of me to my sister by our parents was something I had become used to. While my sister worked a temporary office job, I had chosen a different path that allowed me to work from home. Although I knew our parents' generation might not fully understand the concept of remote work, it still hurt to be consistently belittled. However, one day while I was preparing dinner instead of my perpetually idle parents, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. To my surprise, it was my sister Carol, burdened with a massive amount of luggage. "Hub, Carol, what's going on? It's been a while," I greeted her, taken aback by her sudden appearance. "This is sudden, but I'll be living in this house from today," Carol replied with urgency. Baffled, I blurted out, "Living here from today? I didn't hear anything about this." Carol explained, "Didn't Mom and Dad tell you? I got divorced, so I'll be counting on you from today." Despite my initial shock, I tried to maintain a welcoming demeanor. Ignoring my startled reaction, Carol trudged upstairs and promptly claimed an empty room as her own. My parents sided with her, and I found myself powerless to object. From that moment on, my stress levels began to rise. Carol, after her divorce, had quit her job and spent her days speaking ill of me with our mother. "Hey, Mom, isn't this dress cute?" Carol would ask, showing off her latest shopping find. "Oh yes, indeed, Carol. You're so pretty, it will definitely suit you," our mother would respond enthusiastically. Then Carol would turn to me and remark, "Do you think so too? It's totally not something Lisa would wear, right?" Unable to escape their critical gaze, I continued to live my life without reacting to their taunts. Despite the desire to retaliate, I realized that it would only play into their hands. So I remained steadfast and unresponsive to their attempts to provoke me. One fine day, I knew I had to stay strong and keep focusing on my own happiness, regardless of the negativity around me. I found myself in a truly heartwarming situation when one of my closest friends became the proud owner of a litter of 4 adorable puppies. This significant event sparked a series of changes that would enrich my life tremendously. The moment I saw those precious pups, I felt a deep connection. After careful thought, I decided to adopt a little black Chihuahua from the litter. I named him Charlie. Charlie was a bundle of joy, his round eyes sparkling with mischief. Every time he looked at me, his tail wagged so vigorously, it seemed it might just detach in his excitement. I had always dreamed of owning a Chihuahua since I was a child, and finally having Charlie by my side brought immense happiness into my life. This was particularly true because I often worked from home, and Charlie's companionship provided a much-needed relief from the loneliness of my remote work days. "From today onwards, you're Charlie, okay? Woof," I declared to him, solidifying our bond. Caught up in my excitement, I didn't discuss my decision to bring Charlie home with my family. After all, it was my house, and I was fully responsible for all the expenses related to Charlie's care and well-being. I saw no reason for them to object. However, as soon as I introduced Charlie to my family, my parents and my sister Carol began voicing their concerns. They expressed their displeasure, upset that they hadn't been informed about my intention to get a dog. Some even mentioned their dislike for the potential odors that dogs could bring into a home. My parents and Carol were quite vocal in their disapproval, I recalled. "Hey, we didn't hear anything about you getting a dog," they protested. "Dogs smell, don't they? I hate odors," someone added. "Lisa, how could you just bring a dog home without consulting us?" They continued to scold me. Despite their complaints, I stood my ground and firmly defended my decision. It's my house, and I decided that Charlie and I needed each other. "His presence here is a source of joy, not a cause for complaints," I asserted. I was prepared to show them that Charlie's presence was a blessing, hoping they would soon see him as I did. I explained to them that Charlie wasn't some random street dog, he was a gift from a friend. I also emphasized that I was the one covering all the expenses for Charlie's care and maintenance, so they really had no grounds to complain. "What I choose to keep in my house is my business," I added firmly. "If you have any complaints, you're free to leave." Initially, their annoyance was clear. They were visibly frustrated and upset. However, within just a few hours, a miraculous change occurred. Charlie's undeniable cuteness completely won them over. They couldn't stop doting on him, playfully asking, "Aren't you cute? Are you mummies, daddies, or are you sissies? Look over here, sweetheart." It was as though their frustration had just evaporated into thin air. My entire family had fallen head over heels in love with Charlie, and his presence managed to bring about a remarkable transformation in their attitudes. From that point on, our home was filled with constant adoration for Charlie. Thanks to him, the previous hostility directed towards me began to fade, and I was able to enjoy relatively calm and harmonious days with my family. However, as life tends to go, a disruptive event occurred one day that broke the peace we had come to enjoy. While I was out running an errand, I received an urgent call from my sister Carol. She sounded agitated and demanded, "Come back home now." Startled by her urgent shout, I asked her what had happened. She unleashed her frustration over the phone, shouting back, "It's not what happened. It's what Charlie did. He did his business on my clothes. What if they smell? I tried to calm her down, saying, "Oh, just wash them quickly and they'll be fine. And isn't it your fault for leaving your clothes all over the floor?" Carol retorted, "What? It's my fault? It's your poor training that's to blame." I sighed, realizing that this was just a minor hiccup. "Enough, Carol. Charlie is still a puppy, you know. If you take him out for a walk, he won't do his business at home. You said you were excited to walk Charlie today, didn't you? Did you actually take him?" I had originally planned to take Charlie for a walk later in the day, but I didn't realize this decision would trigger a series of events that would throw my family into chaos. The core issue was that I hadn't fully trained Charlie, our beloved dog, and the consequences of this oversight were about to unravel. When I returned home, I walked into a home filled with tension. My sister Carol, clearly furious, confronted me immediately. Her anger was evident, and it was clear she had already briefed our parents about the mishap, as they too glared at me, standing amid Carol's now soiled clothes scattered across the floor. Carol, distraught, threw the soiled garments at me in a fit of frustration. "I'm going to charge you for the cleaning costs," she declared angrily. "Why should I pay?" I retorted. "It's because you didn't take him for a walk and left your clothes all over the floor." My parents quickly joined in, urging me to take responsibility. "Lisa, shouldn't you at least apologize to Carol?" they suggested. "All of this happened because of that Charlie you brought home." As the accusations continued, I couldn't help but defend Charlie. "Can't we give Charlie some slack? Puppies are like babies. They make mistakes sometimes." But my family seemed determined to blame me and Charlie. "This situation only happened because of this stupid dog," my sister snapped again. "Lisa, you made the right choice by not getting married if you became a mother. I doubt you'd raise a decent child." Her comments grew harsher, and my frustration mounted. "How dare you say something like that?" I exclaimed. "If you had taken him for walks properly and kept the house tidy, none of this would have happened." Finally, my sister reached her limit. She pointed at me and declared, "I can't take this anymore." The situation had escalated beyond simple pet mishaps to personal attacks, revealing deeper family tensions. Despite the hostility, I knew it was essential to remain calm and address each issue thoughtfully, prioritizing Charlie's training and our family's need for better communication and understanding. "I don't need you or this dumb dog. Get out of this house." The words struck me like a ton of bricks. "What?" I stammered in disbelief. "Didn't you hear me? I said get out. We don't need a home-wrecking freeloader here," my sister continued harshly. Her accusation cut deeply, especially since she knew all too well that I was currently without a job. I was stunned. Who did they think was covering the household expenses? It was me. As I stood there, bewildered by my sister's outrageous claims, even my parents joined in, supporting her view. "That's right, Lisa. Leave this house. Your presence only makes us feel worse," they echoed. I had reached my breaking point. "You're all jinxes. Just get out," they shouted together, their voices echoing off the walls. "That's it. I've reached my limit," I finally burst out. "If this is how it's going to be, just wait." With that declaration, I decided to take control of the situation. I quickly packed my belongings and left the house with Charlie wrapped in a towel. As I walked away, thoughts of revenge flickered through my mind, but I knew this saga was far from over. A few days later, as expected, my sister reached out to me in a panic. "Lisa, help. What happened to the house all of a sudden?" she asked, her voice filled with anxiety and desperation. Curious about this new twist in our ongoing family drama, I inquired, "What happened? Why do we suddenly have to leave?" "We were told to leave by the end of this month," she replied, her voice trembling with stress. The realization hit me hard, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was the universe's way of teaching my family a lesson about compassion and understanding. "Ah, so what's the problem here? Why do we suddenly have to leave?" Carol's voice quivered as she struggled to grasp the situation. "I've made the decision to sell the house," I told her firmly. I stated calmly, and Carol froze, disbelief clear in her trembling voice. "What do you mean you've decided to sell it? You don't have the authority," she stammered. A month ago, the house officially became mine, a fact I had kept to myself until now, I explained. Yes, I received the house from Uncle Michael, and the title is in my name, I revealed, causing Carol to react with shock. You're kidding, right? Her skepticism was evident. Even if the title was transferred to you by Uncle Michael, you can't just sell it like that, she argued. I understand your concern, I reassured her, but right after you told me to leave, I consulted with Uncle Michael. He made it clear that the house is mine now, Lisa. He told me to do what I want and suggested I get away from the family as soon as possible. Carol was taken aback, struggling to process this unexpected revelation. What? No way, she muttered. As our conversation continued, I suspected my parents might be listening in through the phone's speaker. Soon enough, they began to voice their objections. Hey, Lisa, cut it out. We have no other place to live if we leave the house, they interjected, trying to appeal to my sense of family loyalty. That's right, Lisa. It's unthinkable to do this to your own family. If you're a good daughter, show some respect to your parents, they added. With a quiet but firm tone, I responded, Respect? What are you talking about? You've always looked down on me compared to Carol. Who do you think has been supporting your life for the past few years? You all had nowhere to live, so I reluctantly let you stay with me. My parents were momentarily silenced by my strong response. Without waiting for their reply, I contemplated the implications of my decision, ready to enforce the boundaries that were long overdue. I continued, Who treated me and Charlie like nuisances and kicked us out? It was you, wasn't it? Trying to drive out the original resident is shameless. My father, his voice full of plea, responded, Please, Lisa, help us. We're sorry. But I had had enough. I don't care. Fend for yourselves, I said resolutely. With that, I abruptly ended the call and blocked all my family members' contacts. Charlie, my loyal canine companion, looked up at me with a worried expression. I held him close and whispered, I'm sorry, Charlie, for shouting. It's all right now. I will protect you. I felt relieved that I had rescued Charlie from a family that had mistreated him. In the days that followed, I learned that my parents and sister had been forced to leave the house at the last minute despite their desperate attempts to cling to it. My father's meager income and my unemployed mother and sister made it impossible for them to maintain a decent life. Rumors circulated that my sister was constantly pressured by my parents to find a job, and their family relationships deteriorated further each day. While I had no interest in their living conditions, it was clear that their standard of living had plummeted since my departure. It was a classic case of reaping what they had sown, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Meanwhile, I enjoyed a fulfilling life in my new pet-friendly apartment, free to work on my terms without anyone complaining. All my earnings were solely for myself and Charlie. I was genuinely content with my life. Charlie, let's go to the dog park today, I said with a smile. Charlie seemed livelier, perhaps because that noisy family was no longer a part of our lives. From that day forward, I was determined to protect Charlie for the rest of our lives and lead a peaceful and happy existence.
Mary was sitting in the pantry. Today her stepmother had guests again, which meant that she would sit there until morning. Mary wasn't offended. She was even glad. When all those who came to her stepmother's house got drunk, Mary had no peace. They all tried to pinch her, tease her about life. Sometimes they even made her dance, and Mary loved to dance madly. Back then, when her father was with them, she went to the dance studio. But the girl didn't really want to dance in front of drunk people. Her father had married Mia 5 years before. For some reason, he decided that it would be bad for him and his daughter alone. Mary's life had been a living hell ever since, and before that they had a very happy family. Mary remembered how well they had lived before. Her mother had always baked a cake on the weekends. They had guests over, and it was fun. Papa loved Mama very much and bought her flowers very often. And then, Mum got sick. For exactly a year, Mary and Dad took care of her. Dad took her to all the hospitals, but Mum died. When Mum died, Dad immediately turned grey. All night, all last night, he sat by Mother's side, holding her hand. He sent Mary off to bed, though she wanted to stay too. And in the morning he woke her up and said, "Mary, you're not going to school today. You will stay with a neighbour." Only after these words the girl opened her eyes and looked at her father. And when she saw him, she screamed. At first he didn't understand what was wrong with her. Then he looked at himself in the mirror. He understood everything and hugged Mary. "Don't be frightened, my daughter. It's not a big deal." Until the funeral, her father never said another word. Not one word. He silently prepared everything, silently did everything. At the cemetery, he bent down to his mother. He stood like that for a while, then straightened up. Not a tear, nothing. Awake, a lot of people. Mum and Dad were always friendly and cheerful. A lot of people came to say goodbye to Mum, and when everyone left, Mary and her dad cleaned up the table. All the dishes were washed. Her father told her to go to bed. Mary obediently came out of the kitchen, but she did not go to bed. She stopped outside the kitchen door. Dad sat down at the table. He put a bottle of vodka in front of him, poured a glass to the brim. He drank it. He sat for a while, drank again, and then he put his head in his hands and cried. Mary was very scared. She never in her life thought that Daddy could sob like that. She ran to her room and hid under the covers. She fell asleep quickly, for it had been a hard day. When she woke up, her father was making her breakfast. Everything seemed to be as usual, except Mama was gone, and Daddy's hair was white. Mary was 9 years old at the time. She felt badly about her mother's death, but she tried not to show it. She saw how hard it was for her father, but she went to work and did household chores. All this in silence. They stopped talking and laughing altogether. Everyone was afraid to say the wrong thing. Then a year later, Mary woke up to voices in the kitchen. She cautiously looked out of her room. Her father was sitting in the kitchen, a bottle of vodka on the table, and a bright red-haired woman was sitting on his lap. She was hugging Daddy, masterfully. Mary then jumped out of the room and threw herself at this woman with her fists. "Get away! Get away from my Daddy! We have a mother!" The woman shrieked, and Father grabbed Mary's hand and took her into the room. "Stay here and don't come out. Mia will live with us. She will be your mother. I'm ashamed of you, you acting like a savage." "Dad, I don't need a substitute. I only have one mother." Her father sighed and knelt down in front of her. "Honey, you have to understand. I have business trips all the time and you're the only one at home, not counting the neighbour. When people find out about this, they'll send you to an orphanage. And Mia is normal, and I like her." That's what I thought. The father went out and Mary was left crying in the room. "Traitor! How could he?" Mary came out of the room in the morning and immediately saw Mia. She was cooking something, and Father was sitting at the table smiling. Mary saw a bottle of beer in front of him. "Dad? Beer in the morning?" "Come on, daughter. It's the day off. Mia gave me permission." Mia gave Mary an unkind look, but then her father turned to them and Mia smiled widely. "Sit down, Mary. Let's have breakfast." Mary wanted to mutter something angry, but she changed her mind. She wasn't going to make a scene. It was her father's choice. She would just see less of this woman. It had only been 2 weeks since her father and Mia had been married. Her father left on another business trip and never came back. His car went over a cliff at breakneck speed. My father was pulled out alive. The money was urgently needed. This was the only thing that could give my father a chance. Mia must have loved her father after all. She found the money by approaching a local oligarch. There was a man in a small town who owed everything. Nobody really knew anything about him. They said he was some old man who hardly ever came out to people. Sometimes you'd see his car driving through town. There were never any cars like that in town. For some reason, everyone was afraid of him, even though no one had ever seen him. There were a lot of tall tales about him. They thought he was almost a Bluebeard in town. No one knew where he had come from in their town. But about 7 or 8 years ago, several buildings in the very centre of town were demolished, and then a huge castle-like cottage was built very quickly. Some said the man came here after some drama in his personal life, and some said that he was just a thug who had taken a well-deserved retirement. There was a bank in town that also belonged to this oligarch. It was there that Mia took a loan on some special terms. A neighbour told me that Mia went there firmly convinced that she would not get a loan. Or rather, to seem good to people, she went there, knowing that she would be denied a loan. Mia would have lost nothing and her reputation would have been greatly enhanced. But she got the loan. Mia was very upset, especially since the bank was aware of everything that had happened and offered to transfer the money immediately to the hospital account. The same neighbour said that Mia was nearly howled with rage. She had not expected such a turn of events, but there were too many people in the bank. People were watching her carefully, and if Mia refused the loan, they would stone her. Not literally, of course, but still. In fact, Mia had grand plans. She planned to sell their huge apartment in the centre in the future, especially since the town was growing and expanding. She wanted to do it with the help of the same oligarch who had built a hotel here, a ski lodge, and run a factory that had stood half destroyed for 10 years. Her father had an operation, but it was not very successful. Her father survived, but one half of his body hardly worked. When he was discharged, Mary heard Mia yelling at him in the room, that because of him she now had a huge loan, that she would never pay it off, that he should send Mary to the streets or something else he could think of, but that he should pay for himself. My father kept quiet, and in the evening he and Mia got drunk. Well, to be more exact, her father was very weak, so Mia poured him a shot and he fell asleep. And she continued her fun, but in a different company, in a big room, with no one to be embarrassed. Her husband was discharged. Why not have fun? That was the way it had been since that day. It is good if Mary has the time to feed her father before his loving wife brings him a glass, so that he sleeps and does not see too much. Otherwise, he starts screaming and falls out of bed. Mary had a hard time as well. She was in the way of Mia. In general, the girl felt that if it was not, then her father would have died very soon under mysterious circumstances. And then a strange thing happened. Mia had no money to pay the loan. She thought of something interesting. She brought to the house some young man in dark glasses. As Mary realized, he was some kind of loan officer or swindler. Mia gave him all her father's documents. The young man promised to take out a loan on him. He said they had a well-established system. This service cost exactly 1/3 of the amount that could be taken. Mia agreed. She hoped to pay off her loan to get some more money. The young man did not cheat. He took out a loan on Mary's father, but they found out about it 3 months later when people from the bank came to their house. Mia was furious. Not only had it all turned out this way, now they also had to restore father's documents, or else they would not get their allowance. There was practically no food in the house. Pasta, potatoes with rottenness from a sale, the cheapest vegetable oil. Mia blamed her father for everything. She yelled at him, sometimes even beat him. Mary was 13 years old at the time. Just after her birthday, her father died. He was the only family member for the girl. Mia's drunkenness became very frequent. The guests would change. Mia would get a good night's sleep, and the house would be full of fun again. Mary often missed school, and Mary's life in general became a nightmare. Mia, every time she saw the girl eating something, she didn't just reproach her, she even shouted at her. Allegedly because of their family now, she was afraid to go out in the street. And she could not sell the apartment because it was Mary's property and Mia was only a guardian. When people from the bank once again caught Mia drunk, they stayed in the house. The combined debt of father and Mia was such that Mia would never be able to pay it off anyway. The men in black suits were sitting in the kitchen, talking loudly about something, and waiting for the hostess to sleep it off. Mia woke up and went straight to the kitchen for a drink of water. She just entered and saw them. She wanted to run, but they caught her. The kitchen door was closed. The men were talking to Mia about something, and Mary did not know what. Mary was very scared, so scared that even her stomach was aching. The men left, and Mia sat in the kitchen for a long time. Then she came out to Mary and looked at her for a long time, and then said, "Damn you, you're your father's brat. Why did I ever meet him?" Mary cried and went into the storeroom as was her habit, and the next day Mia disappeared. She was gone for a week, and then she appeared. Turns out she wanted to go somewhere far away, but it did not work out. At some stop, the same guys from the bank took her off the train and brought her home. They advised her not to do anything stupid like that anymore. Mia stopped drinking alcohol and got a job. She became suspiciously affectionate to the girl. Mary didn't understand what the change was. What was this woman up to? But the fact that she was definitely up to something was immediately clear. One day Mia brought a strange woman into the house. She was so unusual, with short cropped hair, and her hair was multicoloured. She had a large travelling bag in her hands. She pulled out different beautiful dresses, and from a small suitcase the woman took out a camera. Mary watched these preparations spellbound. She had always liked everything to do with photography. And here all the mysteries right in their apartment. Mia was so affectionate, so smiling. "Mary, I was thinking, you don't have a single beautiful picture, and you're almost a big girl. We have to fix that. Kate will take some pictures, and we'll choose the best ones and make you a big picture in a frame." Mary looked at her in surprise. Why would she be so generous? But she was ready to be photographed. She understood she would be photographed in beautiful clothes. Mia was obliging. Every now and then she corrected Mary's long, loose hair. She asked her to touch up her lips a little. It was as if the girl plunged into another world, quite different from the ones she had been living in lately. The photographer left, and Mia did not stop being affectionate. They drank tea, for the first time in all time calmly, without swearing. Mary didn't know, didn't understand what was going on with Mia. But Mia had a plan in her head. The idea had been given to her by someone at another booze party. She didn't even remember who it was. But no matter how drunk Mia was at the moment, in the morning she woke up with one thought in her head. She had nothing to lose. She needed to act. It was quite possible that in this modern depraved world, everything would work out. 2 days later, Mia brought the pictures. Mary was really beautiful in them. She looked like a child, but she was already a girl. The photographer turned out to be a true professional. The photos were stunning. Mary stayed to admire them, and Mia left. She had a second set of photos in her bag. An hour later, she had an appointment with the owner of the bank, which she had a hard time getting. Mia sat down on a bench in front of the bank building and once again went over well in her head everything she was going to say. Mia was escorted into a beautiful office. At the desk sat an elderly man. At first glance, he was about 60 years old, but if you looked closely, the man had crossed that age long ago. He looked attentively at Mia. "Come in. You are very persistent." Mia stepped to the table. "I have a credit in your bank, and my husband has a loan. The first one was for my husband's operation. We wanted to pay off the first one with the second, but we ran into a crook." The man wanted to say something, but Mia hurried up. No, I understand that it's our own fault. My husband is already dead, and both loans are on me." "I don't understand. What do you want? You want me to forgive your debt?" "No, I know banks don't forgive debt. I want to offer you a deal." "A deal? That's very interesting." What could this woman, whose blouse was bought 10 years ago, offer him? But the woman's gaze betrayed a vicious and greedy person, so the bank manager decided to listen. "You understand that I will never be able to find that kind of money. This debt will be due to me for the rest of my life." "And what kind of life is it, with you people following me around? They come barging into the house, and it's not profitable for you. You won't get any money anyway, and you'll only spend more when you punish me. I know that rich people have everything, even things we may not know about. I want to sell you the girl, for the amount owed." The owner of the bank looked at her with surprised eyes. Somehow, involuntarily, he burst out, "Why?" "Why? She will be your slave, concubine, whatever you want. Just don't let her out, that's all. I'll take care of that. I'll tell everyone that she disobeyed me, that I sent her to her aunt abroad. And that's it. No one will look for her." Mia put Mary's photographs on the table. The man took them, looked at them, and shuddered, then began to stare then at one photo, then another. "What do you think of her? She's my stepdaughter." "So you want to sell your stepdaughter into slavery for the amount of the debt?" "Yes." He looked at her and did not understand. Was she joking, or was it serious? Then he realized there was no joke. He put the pictures in front of him. "Go away. I'll think about it." Ninal went out, and Jack looked at the photo again. The little girl reminded him so much of his daughter. The same eye shape, the same hair. "Why did you have such a life as a child?" He looked at the photo for a long time and remembered. He had a daughter, his most beloved and dearest. His wife died in childbirth, so his daughter was everything to him. He was 37 when his daughter came along. He did everything for her, and she grew up and fell in love with some random con man. He told his daughter that this guy wanted one thing, her money, but she wouldn't listen. She went off with him secretly so he couldn't change anything. Jack found her 3 years later, here in the local cemetery. No one really knew anything. People said there had been an accident. Then they said she fell out the window. The crook was long gone. Jack drove here for 5 years, and then he moved here permanently. When everyone here realized who he was, the police got a little more talkative. His daughter had really been killed in an accident. There were even suspicions that it was the conman who set the whole thing up when he realized she wasn't going to ask her daddy for money. But until now, no one could find him. But Jack was able to. Just a year and a half later, his guys brought this pathetic shaking creature to him. Jack wanted to just bury it alive, but he started bargaining. He said he could tell him things that Jack would be very interested in, and it was about his daughter. Jack agreed to listen and promised to keep the Alphonse alive. That's when Mikhail found out that he had a granddaughter, or rather had been. She was only 3 months old when the accident happened. She was very sick and had been left at home that day with a neighbour. And when it happened, the bastard took her to an orphanage in the first city he could find. Jack didn't keep his word back then. For the first time in his life, he still didn't regret it. He was looking for his granddaughter, but they could not help him sincerely. The mess of paperwork finally confused the traces. But that neighbour, with whom his daughter had left her granddaughter, assured him that the child was unlikely to survive. The girl was sick. She had already had a high fever for a week and was suffocating. And in an orphanage, proper care for a sick person is impossible to achieve. Jack had been beating around the bush for years, but he couldn't find any trace of the granddaughter. And he couldn't have been the girl's grandfather. But he read the papers that Mia had brought him. It had been a nice, prosperous family until the girl's mother died. He didn't really know what to do. He understood that this unpleasant woman would not pay back her debt. She would pay a penny all her life, and then she would die with the debt. And the girl would go to an orphanage, although it is unlikely she will let her go. The girl has a nice big apartment. And by the way, the apartment, where's the guarantee this Mia won't try to kill her to get the apartment? After all, she is the next heiress. Jack didn't sleep well at night. By morning, he had made a decision. He would agree to this lady's offer, and then we would see. Mia was informed of the decision and told that the deal had to be completed within 3 days. We had to figure out how to lure Mary into the oligarch's house. Mary, the photographer really liked you. She asked if you could pose for her again in some kind of photo contest. Of course, I'd be delighted. I'll take you tomorrow then. You'll have your picture taken at the new oligarch's castle. Mary goggled her eyes. She had never even dreamed that she could get behind that high fence. In the morning, Mia and Mary headed in the direction of the castle. Mary yawned. She hadn't slept well. It was 5 in the morning outside. Why so early? The town is still asleep. Because it needs dawn. Mary believed it right away. She often admired pictures when it was dawn. In general, Mary thought that sunrise and sunset were the best things to photograph. The door in the high fence was open to them at once. They walked through a beautiful large room and an elderly man came out to them. Mary looked at him with all her eyes. Mia fussed, began to ask for some papers. He sat down at the table, signed something, and gave it to Mia. She, without looking at Mary, rushed to the exit. Mary looked around in confusion, finally turned to the man. Excuse me, when is the photographer coming? What photographer? Well, Mia said I was invited to be photographed. No, baby. Mia sold you for debts. Mary looked at him confused. What do you mean, sold? Is there such a thing? Everything happens in our world. Sit down. Let's have breakfast. He pressed a button on the table, and immediately the door opened and a man in a black suit appeared. He was carrying a tray, and after him a burly lady followed, also carrying a tray. She put the tray in front of Jack, opened the lid. Jack grumbled, "Porridge." The woman pretended not to hear Jack's sighs and walked over to the girl. She opened the tray, too, and looked at her. She froze. The lid of the tray fell out of her hands. She clamped her hand over her mouth. Mary jumped up to her. "Are you all right? Are you unwell?" Jack watched Eva's reaction. He expected her to be surprised, but this reaction was too much. "Eva, go." She wanted to say something, but he looked at her menacingly. Eva had been around ever since they had their daughter. She had been the nurse, the cook, and the helper in everything. Who better than her to remember what her beloved girl looked like? Eva was gone. She was very pale. "Listen, Mary, you are a modern girl. Do you know what happens to those who are sold like you are?" The girl nodded and said at once, "You don't look like a monster." "Thank you, of course. And how old are you?" "I'm 15. I'll be 16 soon." Jack even shook his head. How many coincidences. His granddaughter could be that age now. "Listen, let's do this. You stay with me. There's plenty of room in the house. We have to convince your stepmother that you couldn't get away from me. You can't go back anyway. She'll want to get rid of you. I'll see what I can do about it. I'll find out everything." "Why?" "Why what?" "Why do you want to help me instead of reselling me, for instance?" "Oh, what a good idea." The girl went pale. "Calm down, Mary. I'm joking. You look a lot like my daughter. So much so that Eva dropped the tray. That's why I can't get past your fate, especially since you were sold to me." "What about your daughter? Where is she?" Jack was silent. He never answered such questions. No one had ever dared to ask him one. But Mary looked at him without blinking. "She died a long time ago. It happened 15.5 years ago somewhere in these neighborhoods." "Excuse me?" "Mary, Eva will show you to your room. You'll be bored with me. Find something to do. You can't go outside the gate, though they won't let you out." Jack rubbed his eyes tiredly. The more he was around this girl, the more he found similarities with his daughter. He knew he was just wishful thinking, but he couldn't help it. Mary got up and followed Eva. She had already recovered and pulled herself together. She opened the door to the room. "Here, come in." The girl entered and froze. She had never seen such splendor. Eva smiled. "Do you like it?" "Very much. It's beautiful." "Don't you have any things?" Mary smiled. "No, I was sold without my things." "What do you mean sold?" "Like this, as a slave." Eva froze. She knew her master well. This girl was talking some nonsense. Eva was already elderly, only 5 years younger than Jack. She had known him for a long time, but to do such a thing, some kind of confusion in that girl's mind. But closer to lunchtime, Eva already knew the whole story. She was wiping her eyes when the girl finished her story. "Mary, you don't have to worry. Mr. Davis won't do anything bad to you, and I know it." "How do you know?" "Well, he has such good eyes." Eva showed Mary the whole house. She showed the greenhouse. Mary saw a camera hanging on the wall near the fireplace. "Can I take it?" "Mary, be very careful. This machine is Jack's daughter's." Mary saw that the equipment was prehistoric, but she could see that it was very expensive. She looked at it, touched it. How she wanted a camera too. Always. The girl sighed and hung it up. When Jack entered the house, he almost fainted. At the window stood his daughter in her dress, twirling her camera in her hands. A second later he realized it was Mary. They sat down to dinner. Jack had already changed into his robe, and Mary noticed a strange pendant on his chest. She felt hot somehow. She did not understand why. Eva was pouring her tea, and Mary asked him, "You have such a strange pendant. It doesn't look like a man's pendant." Eva gave her a warning look, but Mary smiled. "It's just that I have one just like it. I thought it was girly." Eva put the kettle on the table with a clatter. Jack stood up and walked over to Mary. She looked at him frightened. "Mary, show me the pendant." The girl took off the pendant, which had always been with her for as long as she could remember. It was strange. It was semicircular on one side, and kind of torn on the other. If you took a ball of dough and tore it open, about that uneven one edge was. Jack removed his own. The two halves came together and clicked. The pendant clasped. Eva was whiter than the dishes on the table. "Oh my God, what on earth is going on?" Jack's heart began to ache. He slipped a pill under his tongue, called the head of security and locked himself in the office with him. "Aunt Eva, did I say something wrong?" "Oh child, I don't understand it myself. What's going to happen now?" The head of security jumped out of the chief's office with a red face. Mary saw two cars drive out of the yard. No one in the house was asleep. Somehow, without talking, everyone was sitting in the living room. Every now and again, Eva brought tea, cakes, and candy. It was as if everyone was waiting for something. Jack's phone rang. "Yes, okay, I'm waiting." Silence again. 15 minutes later, the noise of the cars was heard. Almost immediately, the head of security entered the house, and with him a woman. She was terribly frightened. "Speak." He motioned a chair for her. The woman sat down and looked at him. "What?" "Everything you told me." "I was working in an orphanage when this girl was dropped off on our porch like a puppy. She had a terrible fever, and there were plenty of other illnesses. A doctor came to us from the children's hospital. She was very worried about the little girl, and then I caught her at night at the crib. The doctor was going on vacation and was very worried that the girl would not be treated as she should be. And then she turned to me and asked, 'Is the paperwork done for her yet?' And I said no, we haven't had time. That's when she suggested it to me. I resisted at first, but then I gave up. I knew this woman. She was good, but God did not give them children. So she decided to secretly take the child on a vacation in some village. To stay there for a long time, and then make the girl's documents for money, as if she were her daughter." Jack asked, "What was that woman's name?" And the guest gave the name, surname, and even patronymic of that very doctor. Mary dropped her mug. It was her mother.
"My name's Michelle, and it all started when I was just a kid, 8 years old. My parents split up, and suddenly, I was living with my grandparents. Dad moved to another state, called a few times, then poof, vanished completely after a couple of years. Mom married some loaded businessman and jetted off to Europe. I remember the day Mom left. She hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. 'I'll visit, baby. I promise,' she said. I believed her. Kids are stupid like that sometimes. For a while, she kept her word. She'd sweep in once a year, always on my birthday. No husband, no new baby. Yeah, I forgot to mention, Mom had another kid. A sister I'd never met. But Mom would show up, arms loaded with gifts, smelling of expensive perfume and full of stories about her fabulous new life. Life went on. I went to school, made some friends, tried to be normal. But there was always this hole, you know? This empty space where my parents should have been. Grandpa and Grandma did their best to fill it. Grandpa would take me fishing on weekends, teach me how to bait a hook and cast a line. Grandma was always in the kitchen, cooking up a storm. She'd let me help, teaching me her secret recipes. But when I turned 13, Grandpa got sick. Cancer, the doctors said. It was quick, brutal. One minute he was there, telling his corny jokes and showing me how to fix a leaky faucet. The next, he was gone. The funeral was small. Just me, Grandma, and a handful of neighbors. Mom couldn't make it. Business emergency, she said over the phone. I wanted to scream at her, tell her that her own father was dead, for crying out loud. But I didn't. I just said, okay, Mom, I understand. When I turned 16, Mom's yearly visits suddenly stopped. No explanation, no apology, just radio silence. Our relationship dwindled down to occasional phone calls, usually initiated by me. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my studies. Graduated high school with decent grades, nothing spectacular but enough to get me into a local college. Those years flew by in a blur of classes, part-time jobs, and hanging out with friends. Before I knew it, I was tossing my cap in the air at graduation. After college, I landed a job at a local marketing firm. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me a sense of purpose. Life was okay. Not great, not terrible, just okay. I had my routine, my friends, my cozy little world in Grandma's house. But life, that sneaky bastard, had other plans. It started with Grandma forgetting things. Small stuff at first, where she put her glasses, what day it was. I brushed it off as old age. But then it got worse. She'd forget to turn off the stove, wander out of the house in her nightgown. The diagnosis came like a punch to the gut, Alzheimer's. I tried my best to take care of her, but it was hard. Watching the woman who raised me, who was my rock, slowly slip away, it was hell. The day she died, I was holding her hand. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. Michelle, she said, her voice barely a whisper, I love you, sweetheart. And then she was gone. I called Mom, choking back tears. Mom, Grandma's, she's gone. There was a long pause on the other end. Oh, Michelle, she finally said, her voice oddly flat. I'm so sorry. I can't get away right now. Work is just crazy. You understand, don't you? So I planned the funeral alone. Picked out the casket, arranged the flowers, wrote the eulogy. The service was small, just like Grandpa's. As I watched them lower the casket, I felt more alone than ever. After the funeral, I went back to Grandma's house, my house now, I guess. It felt too big, too empty. But I couldn't bear the thought of leaving. This was my home, filled with memories of the two people who'd raised me. Life went on. I threw myself into work, trying to fill the void Grandma left behind. Months passed, then a year, then 2. Then, out of the blue, Mom called. Michelle, darling, she chirped, sounding oddly cheerful. I have wonderful news. Your sister's coming to America for college. Isn't that exciting? I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, I guess. That's nice. Here's the thing, Mom continued, her voice taking on that syrupy sweet tone she used when she wanted something. She wants to go alone, but I'm worried about her. I was hoping she could stay with you. I felt my stomach drop. Mom, I don't think. Now, Michelle, she cut me off, her voice suddenly sharp. Let's not forget who that house really belongs to. I'm the direct heir, you know. I've been very generous letting you live there. The least you could do is look after your sister. I felt like I'd been slapped. But Grandma left the house to me, I said weakly. She wrote a will. Mom laughed, a cold sound that sent chills down my spine. Oh, sweetie. You don't understand how these things work. Trust me, I could claim that house if I wanted to. But I'm not going to, as long as you help out with your sister. Understand? My mind was reeling. Could she really take the house? I didn't know enough about inheritance law to be sure. And the thought of losing my home, the last connection I had to Grandma and Grandpa. The day my sister arrived felt like the beginning of the end. I stood at the airport, holding a sign with her name, Chloe, feeling like an idiot. I'd only seen her in Mom's Facebook photos, always dolled up and posing like a model. I figured I'd spot her easily. Boy, was I wrong. I almost missed her when she strutted out of the arrival gate. This girl looked nothing like the sister I'd seen in pictures. She was, well, perfect. Too perfect. Like someone had ordered her from a celebrity lookalike catalog. Chloe? I called out, uncertain. She turned, her oversized sunglasses perched on a nose that was definitely not the one I'd seen in older photos. Oh my God, you must be Michelle, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. As she got closer, I could see the work she'd had done. Lips pumped up like life rafts, cheekbones that could cut glass, and a body that screamed at plastic surgeon's magnum opus. I felt like a potato next to her. As we waited for a porter, because apparently, that was a thing now, Chloe started rattling off demands like she was reading from a 5-year-old's Christmas list. So, like, in Europe, we have this amazing housekeeper who does everything. And a cook. You've arranged for that, right? She didn't wait for an answer. And I'll need my own car. Nothing cheap, obviously. Maybe a Mercedes. I stood there, mouth hanging open. Was this girl for real? Chloe, I said, trying to keep my voice level, I work a regular job. I can't afford. She cut me off with a wave of her manicured hand. Ugh. Whatever. Mom will take care of it. Let's just go already. We made it to the parking lot, and I led her to my car, a beat-up old Honda that had seen better days. Chloe took one look at it and lost her mind. What kind of squalor is this? Each word was like a slap. You expect me to ride in that thing? Before I could respond, she whipped out her phone. Mom? Yeah? It's me. You will not believe what Michelle is trying to make me ride in. It's practically a death trap. Huh? Yeah. Okay, love you too. She hung up and turned to me, a smug smile on her face. Mom's arranging for a car service. You can take that rust bucket home yourself. An hour later, Chloe's fancy town car pulled up in front of Grandma's house. As soon as we stepped inside, Chloe's dramatics reached new heights. Ugh. It smells like old people and mothballs in here, she shrieked. This is, like, a health hazard or something. We need to throw everything out and start over. I watched in horror as she stomped through the house, criticizing everything from the worn carpet to the family photos on the walls. When she reached my bedroom, she tossed her designer bag on the bed. This room's mine now. You can sleep. I don't know, wherever. The couch maybe? I stood there, speechless. This was my room. My sanctuary. The place where I'd cried myself to sleep after Grandma died, where I'd celebrated getting my first job, where I kept all my memories. But looking at Chloe's face, I knew arguing would be pointless. This girl was used to getting her way, and she'd make my life hell if I refused. A week after Hurricane Chloe made landfall in my life, I came home from work to find a shiny new Mercedes parked in my spot in the garage. My beat-up Honda had been unceremoniously shoved onto the street. What the hell? I muttered, stepping into the house. Chloe was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up. Oh, that's my new car. Mom got it for me. Your piece of junk was taking up valuable space. The next day, I thought I'd seen it all. I was wrong. I came home from work, exhausted and looking forward to a quiet evening. Instead, I walked into chaos. The house was filled with strange men in overalls, carrying out furniture and bringing in new pieces I'd never seen before. I found Chloe in the backyard, sipping a cocktail and supervising the mayhem like a pint-sized dictator. "Oh, you're home," she said, not bothering to look at me. "Don't worry, I've got everything under control. This dump needed a major overhaul." I told Mom it was unlivable, and she agreed. "You should be thanking me." I watched in horror as workers carried out Grandma's old rocking chair, the bookshelf Grandpa had built by hand, the coffee table where I'd done my homework for years. "Stop," I cried. "You can't throw those out." But it was too late. I could only watch helplessly as my memories were tossed into a dumpster. That night, I called Mom, tears streaming down my face. "How could you let her do this?" I sobbed. "This is my home." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Mom spoke, her voice was cold. "Let's get one thing straight. That house belongs to me. I'm the rightful heir, and I'm letting you live there out of the goodness of my heart. If you can't appreciate that, maybe we need to reconsider this arrangement." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. You wouldn't. "Just be grateful and keep quiet," Mom snapped. "And for God's sake, try to be nicer to your sister. She's doing you a favor." The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like my whole world was crumbling around me. The renovation lasted 2 hellish weeks. I came home every day to find more of my life erased, replaced by Chloe's idea of fashion. The warm, cozy home I'd grown up in was transformed into something out of a sterile design magazine. When it was finally over, I stood in the living room, feeling like a stranger in my own house. The familiar floral wallpaper was gone, replaced by stark white paint. Grandma's comfy old sofa had been swapped for a sleek leather monstrosity that looked about as comfortable as sitting on a rock. The family photos that used to line the walls were nowhere to be seen. As I retreated to my new room, the smallest bedroom, since Chloe had claimed the master for herself, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing more than just furniture. I was losing my connection to Grandma and Grandpa, to the life I'd built here. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Chloe decided to turn our house into party central. It started small, just a few friends over on a Friday night. But soon, it was like living in a nightclub that never closed. Every weekend, sometimes even on weeknights, the house would fill up with Chloe's college buddies. They were all cut from the same cloth as her, rich, entitled, and looking down their noses at everything and everyone they deemed beneath them. Which, apparently, included me. One night, I overheard Chloe talking to one of her friends in the kitchen. I wasn't eavesdropping, I swear. I was just trying to grab a quick snack before retreating to my room to escape the chaos. "Who's that?" I heard a girl ask. "She looks kinda old to be here." Chloe's laugh was like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh, that's just Michelle. She's like this distant cousin or something. Mom lets her work here as a maid." I slammed the fridge shut, not caring if they heard me. Tears stung my eyes as I stormed back to my room. How dare she? This was my house, damn it. The next morning, after Chloe had finally rolled out of bed around noon, I confronted her. "No more parties," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This has to stop. I'm tired of coming home to a house full of strangers. I'm tired of the noise, the mess, everything." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're such a buzzkill. No wonder you don't have any friends." "This isn't about friends," I said. "The neighbors are complaining. There are families with kids next door, elderly people who can't sleep because of your noise." "Not my problem," Chloe shrugged. "They should move if they can't handle a little fun." I was about to really let her have it when the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Johnson from next door, looking tired and frustrated. "Michelle, dear," she said, "I hate to be a bother, but these parties, they're getting out of hand. Last night, someone threw up in my rose bushes." I felt my face burn with shame. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Johnson. It won't happen again. I promise." As soon as I closed the door, I turned to Chloe. "That's it. No more parties. I mean it. The next day, I got a call from Mom. I should have known Chloe would go running to her. Michelle, Mom's voice was sharp. What's this I hear about you trying to control your sister? I took a deep breath. Mom, it's not like that. The parties are out of control. The neighbors are complaining. The neighbors? Mom cut me off. Who cares about the neighbors? Your sister is trying to make friends, to have a normal college experience. And you're trying to ruin it for her. But Mom. No buts, she snapped. I won't have you interfering with Chloe's studies or her social life. Do you understand me? I felt something snap inside me. All the frustration, all the anger I'd been holding back, it all came rushing out. No, Mom, I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking. I can't live like this anymore. Take your precious Chloe back to Europe if you want, but I'm done being her maid and punching bag. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding. I'd done it. I'd finally stood up for myself. Just when I thought I'd finally taken a stand, life threw me another curveball. A week after my ultimatum to Mom, she showed up on my doorstep unannounced. She looked different, tired, worn down in a way I'd never seen before. Michelle, she said, her voice quivering. We need to talk. I let her in, my mind racing. Was she here to take the house? To drag Chloe back to Europe? Instead, she dropped a bombshell that left me reeling. I'm sick, Michelle, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. The doctors, they don't think I have much time left. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. What? Mom, what are you talking about? She went on to explain about some rare disease, using medical terms I didn't understand. But the gist was clear, Mom was dying. That's why I need you, sweetheart, she said, gripping my hand. Chloe, she's going to need someone when I'm gone. Someone to guide her, to be there for her. I need to know she'll have you. If you do, well, I'll make sure you're taken care of too. The house will be yours, free and clear. I blinked. But, the house is already mine. Grandma's will. Mom waved her hand dismissively. As Grandma's daughter, I'm the primary heir. I could claim at least half the house if I wanted to. My head was spinning. I need time to think, I stammered. Mom nodded, wiping away a tear. Of course, dear. I'll be here for a couple of days. We can talk more. Those 2 days were surreal. Mom fawned over the renovations Chloe had done, praising her exquisite taste at every turn. I was silent, afraid to say something rude about it. But the weirdest part was Chloe's behavior. It was like someone had flipped a switch. Gone was the party girl, replaced by a perfect angel who helped with dishes and spoke in a sickeningly sweet voice. She even offered to make dinner one night, though I noticed she ordered takeout and tried to pass it off as her own cooking. Mom ate it up, literally and figuratively. See how thoughtful your sister is, she cooed. You two are going to be so good for each other. I wanted to scream. Couldn't Mom see through this act? But every time I opened my mouth to protest, I remembered Mom's words about the house. About her illness. Could I really risk losing everything? On the last night of Mom's visit, she cornered me in the kitchen. Have you thought about what I said? She asked, her eyes pleading. I took a deep breath. Yes, I said finally. I'll try for you. Mom's face lit up. She pulled me into a hug, something she hadn't done in years. Thank you, sweetheart. You don't know what this means to me. I can go back to Europe knowing Chloe will be in good hands. The ink had barely dried on Mom's departure when Hurricane Chloe made her grand return. The following week, I got off work early and headed home, looking forward to a quiet evening. As soon as I turned onto our street, I knew something was wrong. The bass from some EDM track was so loud it made my car windows vibrate. I burst through the front door to find my worst nightmare come to life. The house was packed with people, drunk college kids, sketchy-looking older guys, even a couple making out on my grandmother's antique table. "Chloe," I screamed over the music. "Where are you?" I pushed through the crowd, dodging spilled drinks and grabbing hands. When I reached Chloe's room, I found the door locked. Without thinking, I kicked it open. Chloe was there, tangled up with some guy I'd never seen before. They both looked up at me, startled. "What the fuck?" Chloe shrieked. "Get out." Something in me snapped. All the frustration, all the anger I'd been bottling up for months came pouring out. "No, you get out," I roared. "All of you. This party is over." I stormed through the house, turning off the music and shouting at people to leave. When they didn't move fast enough, I grabbed the phone. "I'm calling the cops," I yelled. "Anyone still here in 5 minutes is getting arrested." That got them moving. The house emptied in record time, leaving behind a mess that made my stomach turn. Chloe emerged from her room, her face twisted with rage. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she spat. "You're just jealous because I know how to have fun." Well, guess what? I got kicked out of college, so now I can party whenever I want. And there's nothing you can do about it. Something inside me broke. Without thinking, I grabbed her arm and dragged her to the front door. "Oh, yeah, watch me." I shoved her outside, then ran back to her room. I grabbed armfuls of her designer clothes and threw them out onto the lawn. "You want to party? Go party somewhere else," I screamed, my voice hoarse. By now, neighbors had gathered, drawn by the commotion. I could hear Mrs. Johnson's voice, saying something about how it was about time I stood up for myself. But I didn't care about the audience. I was beyond caring about anything. I was still sitting on the floor, my back against the front door, when my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered, bracing myself for the storm. "How dare you?" Mom's voice crackled through the speaker, shrill with anger. "Chloe just called me in tears. You ungrateful little reptile, after everything I've done for you." I cut her off with a laugh. A real, genuine laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. "Everything you've done for me?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "That's rich, Mom. Really rich." "Don't you take that tone with me, young lady," Mom snarled. "I'll remind you that I'm the rightful heir to that house. I can take it away from you with a snap of my fingers." I felt a smile spread across my face. "No, Mom, you can't. I talked to a lawyer yesterday. Grandma's will is ironclad. She left everything to me. Not you, not Chloe. Me. And there's nothing you can do about it." I heard Mom take a shaky breath. When she spoke again, her tone had changed completely. "Now, Michelle, let's not be hasty. I'm sure we can work something out. If you take Chloe back, I'll make it worth your while. I have property in Europe, a villa by the sea, a vineyard. It could all be yours." I thought about it for a moment. A villa by the sea did sound nice. But then I remembered the peace I'd felt in the moments after I'd kicked Chloe out. The relief of finally standing up for myself. No villa was worth giving that up. "Thanks, but no thanks," I said firmly. "Grandma left me her savings. It's more than enough for me to live comfortably. I don't need or want anything from you." I hung up and immediately blocked both her number and Chloe's. As I sat there in the quiet house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, I was truly free. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into cleaning up the mess Chloe had left behind, both literally and figuratively. I repainted walls, scrubbed floors, and slowly began to reclaim my space. One day, as I was chatting with Mrs. Johnson over the fence, she mentioned something that made my heart skip a beat. "You know," she said casually, "I saw some furniture at the flea market last week that looked just like your grandmother's old pieces. It was a shame to see it there, but I figured you must have sold it during the renovation." I thanked her and raced to my car. An hour later, I was wandering through the flea market, my heart pounding. And there they were, the grandma's old rocking chair, the bookshelf Grandpa had built, even the coffee table where I'd done my homework for years. I bought them all back for a fraction of what they were worth to me. The vendor looked at me strangely as I hugged the rocking chair, tears in my eyes, but I didn't care. Over the next few days, I transformed one of the spare bedrooms into a replica of Grandma's old living room. As I arranged the familiar furniture, hung the old family photos back on the walls, I felt like I was rebuilding more than just a room. I was rebuilding my connection to my past, to the people who had loved me unconditionally. Months have passed since then. The house is quiet now, peaceful. Sometimes, when I sit in Grandma's rocking chair, reading a book or just enjoying the silence, I think about everything that's happened. About Mom and Chloe and the life I thought I wanted. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt sometimes, knowing I've cut ties with the only family I had left. But then I look around at the home I've reclaimed, at the life I've built for myself, and I know I made the right choice.